$2,000 tariff checks are suddenly back in the headlines, and I know exactly what a lot of people are thinking right now. Is this real? Did something actually change? Or is this just another round of confusing headlines that lead nowhere? If you felt frustrated or skeptical when you hear about possible checks, you're not alone. In today's video, I want to slow this down and explain why $2,000 tariff checks are being talked about again, what actually changed recently, what has not changed at all, and what a realistic timeline would look like if anything ever moved forward. This is not hype. This is not a promise, but it is an update you should understand. Let's start with why this conversation suddenly resurfaced. Over the past several days, tariff policy and trade discussions have returned to the spotlight. Whenever tariffs come up, so does the question of revenue. And whenever revenue comes up, someone inevitably asks the same thing. Should some of that money go back to the public? That's how the tariff rebate conversation gets revived. Not because checks were approved, not because a bill passed, but because the topic itself is back on the table. That's an important distinction. A lot of headlines skip that nuance. They jump straight to the most eye-catching idea, which is the dollar amount. $2,000. That number grabs attention. But attention does not equal action. So let's be very clear right now. There is still no approved $2,000 tariff check. There is no signed legislation. There is no payment schedule. What has changed is discussion, not decision. Now let's talk about where the $2,000 number even comes from. This is not a number written into law. It's not a guaranteed figure. It's an estimate that gets used in public conversation to illustrate what a rebate could look like if Congress chose that route. When policymakers talk about rebate ideas, they often use round numbers to show scale. $2,000 per household sounds impactful. But that does not mean that amount would ever be approved or that everyone would receive the same amount. It's an example, not a promise. Now let's talk about what Congress is actually doing right now. Lawmakers are debating tariffs from multiple angles. Some view tariffs as a way to protect domestic industries. Others worry tariffs increase prices for consumers. Because of that divide, there are very different opinions on what should be done with any revenue tariffs generate. Some lawmakers argue that tariff revenue should reduce government deficits. Others argue it should fund specific programs, and some suggest that rebates could help offset higher prices caused by tariffs themselves. Right now, none of those ideas has majority support, and without majority support, nothing moves forward. This is where it's important to understand how Congress really works. A lot of ideas get discussed. Very few become law. Now let's talk about timing, because this is where expectations often get unrealistic. Even if Congress decided tomorrow that tariff rebates were a good idea, checks would not arrive quickly. First, legislation would have to be written. Then it would need to move through committees. Then it would be debated, amended, and voted on. After that, it would need to be implemented. That process takes months, sometimes much longer. There is no realistic scenario where $2,000 checks suddenly appear without warning. If something real were moving forward, you would see very clear signs. Bills, committee hearings, votes, official announcements. None of that has happened yet. Now let's talk about eligibility, because this is another major unknown. If tariff checks were approved, Congress would still need to decide who qualifies. Would it be per household or per individual? Would income limits apply? Would retirees qualify the same way working households do? Would people on Social Security automatically receive payments? Right now, there are no answers to these questions. And without answers, no one can honestly say who would get money. That's why claims that everyone will get $2,000 are misleading. Now let me pause for a moment and speak directly to you. I know this is frustrating. A lot of people are struggling with higher costs. Budgets are tight, and when you hear about possible checks, it naturally raises hope. I'm trying my best to give you updates that are honest and grounded. That means telling you what's real, what's still being talked about, and what has not happened. I'd rather be accurate than sensational. Now let's keep going. Another important point that gets misunderstood is how this relates to Social Security. Tariff checks would be completely separate from Social Security. They would not replace Social Security benefits. They would not reduce your monthly check. They would not increase your monthly check. And they would not change eligibility rules. If tariff rebates ever happened, they would be a separate policy entirely. This matters a lot for retirees and people on fixed incomes. Your Social Security income is governed by existing law. Tariff discussions do not change that. Now let's talk about funding, because this is where things get complicated. Tariff revenue is not guaranteed. It depends on trade volume, consumer behavior, and how long tariffs remain in place. If imports decline or companies shift supply chains, revenue could be lower than expected. That uncertainty makes lawmakers cautious about promising rebates. You cannot promise to give money back if you're not sure how much money will come in. This is one reason these ideas often stall. Now let's talk about what you should do right now. The most important thing is not to plan your finances around a proposed rebate. Until something is officially approved, it should be treated as uncertain. If you receive Social Security, SSI, or SSDI, your monthly benefit is confirmed income. That's what you should plan around. Anything else should be considered a possibility, not a guarantee. If you find these explanations helpful, take a moment to subscribe. This channel is focused on breaking down updates clearly, without hype or panic. Now, let's continue. It's also worth remembering that Congress introduces many proposals that never become law. Some gain traction, others quietly disappear. That's normal. The legislative process is slow, complicated, and often frustrating. That doesn't mean discussions are meaningless, but it does mean they should be interpreted cautiously. Now let's bring everything together. Here's where things stand right now. Yes, $2,000 tariff checks are being talked about again. No, there is no approved program. No, there is no payment timeline. What changed is that tariff policy is back in public discussion, and with it, the idea of rebates. That's it. If that conversation turns into real legislation, you will hear about it clearly. And when that happens, I'll break it down step by step. Until then, staying informed without panic is the smartest approach. If you want the latest updates as they happen, click the video on your screen right now. That video covers the most current Social Security and payment news you need to know. I'll see you there.